sad times in my head. That's feelings come up and just let them go.
Change my life, things, mate. Change the way I think, change my life.
Been very emotional.
All right, welcome back to the Polaris podcast, the number one mental health podcast in the world. We just made that yesterday.
Nice.
We got a new one. We're
Claiming
it.
Claiming it.
No one else is doing it.
Well,
Might as
We'll
well.
take it. I'll take it.
Might as well.
Yeah.
Take the spot.
And the first podcast in the new studio.
Yeah, so we got a new studio,
Set up.
everyone. You'll get to see it in a couple of weeks. Or tomorrow. No, tonight. Tomorrow not. We're going to post it
Well,
video.
so what's today? Today's Wednesday. I'm going to have this edited and out for Friday. But then people, you would have seen it a couple of days ago. So we're about to post a reel tonight.
Yeah, that's the real. That's where I was getting at.
Yeah.
We have a guest on today, everyone. We've you spoke and we listened.
Yes.
Mr. Will from Primabolics. Welcome back.
Hang on.
We got a clap.
Hey, I can hear it this
You
time.
can hear it this time.
I can hear it now. Hey, I get it now.
Yeah.
That's far better. I feel much more involved when I hear the
Yeah.
applause.
It's so much better. We've all got headphones on now, so I don't feel like I'm yelling as
And
much.
people say, they're like, oh, why do you wear headphones in podcasts? Are you fucking kidding me? Listen to this.
It sounds so much better in my head.
So much better.
That Barry White audio quality. It's on
We were
point.
flirting before.
We were.
So good. How are you, mate?
Mate, good. It's been the fitness industry's been off its head this year. I feel in general, and with it, it's taken me for quite a ride. So yeah, but since we've been in last heaps, mate, it's happened heaps and heaps. Been overseas, come back, really done a lot more self work too, which is really cool. So
Beautiful.
tying more into your guys' world. Business has been off its head as well. Hired 3 more staff in the last week, 2 weeks, sorry. So that's been really awesome as well. Just all systems go, really.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's no off button at the moment, it seems. Everything's just buzz.
Yeah,
So-
every time I see your stories, it's just like, all right, I'm off to Tamworth and then I'm going to Cairns.
I don't
and
know
I'm
who's
going-
more all over the place, you or Sandor, because whenever I watch either of your stories, you're just somewhere, man.
Yeah.
So I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Man, we had a PB last time. It was only last week. It was the week before. Had a string of seminars out at went like Newcastle to Muswellbrook to Mudgee to Dubbo, back to Sydney, flew to Darwin, did seminars in Darwin, left a seminar, drove to the airport from the seminar, flew from that seminar to Sydney, hit stores, kept going, drove to the warehouse back here in Newcastle. Like
Jesus.
that's even for me, that's fucked up. It's been wild. But sometimes you got to see what you can do. So
Yeah,
stress
well
test it every now and then.
killing
Jesus
it.
Christ. And we are complaining.
It's all
I'm
relative.
always complaining, man.
It's like, oh, we're so busy.
It's good. We had to get audio gear. It's good.
Yes.
But it's fair. It's all relative. It takes 10 years to acclimatise to a certain level of stress. So and that's what we're talking about today, which is
Yeah, we
which is
are.
nuts.
Yep.
Before we get into that, I just want to say that your product, the tablets,
Restore.
magnesium restore. Oh,
That
It has
is
been-
a fucking game changer.
yeah, massive game changer.
Game
man.
changer.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I don't know how many bottles I've gone through now, but since
We had some for the ad read.
Yeah.
I
He's
took
like,
'em.
he's like, can I take them? I'm like, oh, we're gonna do the ad read. He's like, yeah, but I need them.
they're so good, man. Like ever since when I was saying, I think last time we spoke, I was saying what my sleep was like 4 hours.
Yeah. Yep.
Now it's anywhere from like 6, 7, 8 sometimes. Even had a 10 and a half in there
Oh,
a couple of weeks ago, which was great.
Yep.
that's massive. And you-
Massive.
and you?
Massive. Oh, like we said before, like
You-
my dreams was like I was dreaming, but like this just sends me to another fucking dimension. I'm just like, feed me and get me to bed. Like last night. Last night was a bit of a different one. I stayed up a bit later, watched a movie on Netflix, so I didn't get to bed till like 11:30,
Oofed.
but woke up at 7, which was probably a little bit less than optimal amount of
Yeah,
sleep.
yeah, but
But mate, top of the world.
Crisp.
Just dreaming.
It's
Yeah.
I've also I'll stop having it for a few days too, and to see if I can still try and keep it around, and I do. Like
Yeah.
I've been my RAM used to be like 49 minutes, and now it's going into like 2.5 hours and stuff.
Man, that's the sort of stuff when people talk about time in bed versus sleep quality, right? Because everyone, and this is an interesting one. There was a study with, they had over, Apple did it actually, with the American Medical Association. So it was the AMA with Apple, and they looked at over 2 million nights sleep data that they pulled from the Apple Watches and all the wearables. And they looked at, I suppose, the average amount of time in like sleep quality and sleep time in bed versus reported sleep. So someone says, I'm in bed at 9 p.m., and I get up at 7, so that's 10 hours, right? They overreported it, an average of 36 minutes was the overreporting of how long they actually slept to. So what they would find is you'd get to bed you'd crawl into bed at 9,
Yep.
but it would take them that 36 minutes as an average to get, so they weren't actually in sleep initiated properly for nearly 40 minutes later, so
Yeah.
at 10, then they wrapped it through. So if you think you're and this is interesting because like a lot of the studies that look at where they literally defined sleep deprivation as a form of torture, right? Like they did it with Navy SEALs where they put them on their way of stress testing. It was they put them on 5 hours of sleep a night for a week, right? And it was incredible. It lowered their testosterone, the equivalent of aging 10 years in a week, right?
Wow.
Just sleeping 5 hours. Now, where this is relevant is that people, when you look at, they over-reported their sleep by half an hour, well, closer to 40 minutes at 36 minutes. Well, a lot of them were getting 6 hours, 7 hours sleep anyway, was the reporting amount of time. So they're actually more like 5.5, 5-ish. And 5 hours is where you're dangerously close to basically literally calling it torture. It's sleep deprivation that will induce massive hormonal issues. And that was a huge chunk of the average population was sleeping 6 hours, over-reporting it by nearly 40 minutes. So it was actually only 5.5. And then they wonder why you have so many mental health issues, so many crises, so much stress, anxiety, bipolar disorders, all these issues, and people having low testosterone and metabolic diseases, type 2 diabetes, we're all inflamed, we'll have gut issues. And it's like no wonder why. Like everyone's, so stressed, not sleeping as well, and sleep quality's crash. So when you look at like your time in bed, even if you analyze your 6 hours in bed previously with 49 minutes of REM versus 6 hours in bed with 2 hours of REM, that is a polar opposite hormonal response, metabolic response, aging response.
I've noticed if I do have once it's anything over an hour of REM, I feel so good. Like I feel like I think it was the night before I think it was like 49 minutes or something, and then I didn't feel too good.
Yep.
And the next night it was 2.5 hours, and I was just like, I woke up and I think I had it was six and a half hours sleep, and I just felt so good because the way I've started to realize is doing nice breath work and like reset my nervous system. Do that before bed, and then I'm so much more calmer, and I can just I just doze straight. Like I'm on clockwork. Like 7:30 comes around, I'm starting to tire. Have my tablets. I'll do my breath work, and then boom, I'm going 8 o'clock out of there.
The breath work's a cracker one. What you guys do is really interesting because there's a lot of ways of physically manipulating the nervous system.
Yeah.
Breath, like doing breath work, doing ice baths, doing like working when we're dropping people into a space, so to speak, and so on. Where we're winding them into a parasympathetic place, right? Like your nervous system's got the two settings, and you guys are like, by doing those guided breath works or meditations or ice baths, you're helping basically modulate their nervous system whichever way you want to go. If it's an ice bath, it ramps it up. And like we said last time, that's why a lot of the time you felt fantastic after an ice bath before, because that's probably the first time you've had a healthy cortisol response in the morning for a long time. Because if you were getting sub an hour of RAM every night, you would have been feeling like a zombie in the morning. So that's the ice baths and things and the saunas. They increase the stresses. They put a stress response on our nervous system that we hopefully have a positive adaptation to. And then the breath work, the guided meditation, all those sort of great things, they actually wind it down. And so we can use those things periodically as sort of life hacks to where we need to be up, we can be up. Where we need to be down, we can be down. A good combination. I like doing the both, supplemental hacks and life hacks. That's a much more thorough way of very holistic. That's good.
I've noticed a massive difference since like you getting your sleep and new routine and like, well, I shouldn't say new routine, but like
A more hectic
more adherent to the routine, I guess that would be the word. And it just seems like he's like just pepping his step.
I like this one,
24/7.
the work wife. I like this. I like this one. I've noticed in my work wife that he's much more for everything.
Exactly.
It's so much fresher now. I like that. That's cool. And it is. It makes it flows on so nicely to all other areas of life, which is how composed we are, how we how we deal with stress, and like all we see in like if you look at top level athletes. So there was a nutritionist who worked with literally nothing but gold medalists, right? Like high level Olympians. And the thing the interesting part they kept finding is that they'd put people through the same battery of tests, the same suite of tests, and the only thing that really decided whether they were going to have a positive or negative adaptation was their tolerance for stress, their ability for their body to actually take a beating and how they perceived that stress and how they responded to that stress and how they backed up to stress. So stress tolerance was basically was the biggest deciding factor that would make these people either subpar athletes or gold medalists, because it was if you were stress resilient, you would imply stress on your body, you'd adapt positively, and you'd hopefully progress, whether it was build muscle, get faster, get stronger, whatever. Alternatively, if that was someone who stress just knocked them, they would just take that hit and then just be in a hole, and they might recover to here instead of recovering past, and actually getting a positive adaptation. They just dig themselves a hole. We see this a lot with probably maybe people you've see at connection days and stuff. Yeah, people who have come in, they've just you can just see it, sunken eyes, like really, like, forward traps, rolled posture, and really just beaten down. Their nervous system is so fried.
Yeah.
Years of chronic stress, chronic trauma, chronic issues have just really pounded them, and they've dug themselves such a deep hole. It can take, even with Restore and stuff, it might take me weeks to pull these guys out of a place, to get them to a functional spot, and get their nervous system healthy enough to get them back to a point where you've earned the right to apply a stressful situation and get a good response again. Athletes are a cracker one for it, actually. But even like shift workers and nurses and parents have broken sleep for years. Years of broken sleep. And and then apply to that, the solution to that is caffeine, right? And caffeine's a stressor and all this stuff. So, funny enough, all those little segments, all those nice little rabbit holes we just covered, tie in beautifully to today. But
you want to talk about what we talk about it?
Yeah, probably shouldn't we?
Yeah, definitely. I think we were meant to do it a while ago, but never did.
Yeah, we got carried away again, like we do.
That's right. I made sure that I had nothing on after this. Family dinner's cancelled, so you've got me.
I've just got the footy, and that's it. So
copy. Okay, we can film that too.
Right. Joe Rogan podcast.
Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, let's dump 3 hours on this thing.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I think that where we tried to go the first time and failed. Admittedly, good content. I got quite a few messages after the first one, and I was really like, a lot of people got value out of it.
Yeah,
so.
I had a lot of people message me too. They said
nice.
they really enjoyed your podcast and they got a lot out of it as well.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That's what we're doing it for, right? We're all here of our own accord. It's not a sponsored podcast. We're not getting paid for it.
Not yet.
Yeah,
not yet. We're trying.
Working on it.
Spotify, come on.
We're trying.
Spotify,
give us a deal.
Come at us, guys.
Give us that 20 million deal.
We got this. But we're putting out value because it's what we do. So
Exactly.
And the value we want to play with today, I suppose, want to dispense today is around how that stress we just briefly touched on impacts female hormones more so and female physiology, because I suppose this is something we're looking at doing an event around in 100%. Person. So we're going to talk about it here in content and just probably glance over some areas to be considerate of with the intention of we're going to do more of a seminar in person with a workshop running you guys through some of the lifestyle hacks we'll talk about, some of the supplemental hacks, some of the techniques you guys go through as well to really holistically tackle this. But this will be a bit of a preface to an event we're planning. When this comes out, hopefully in coming weeks, we can put something together and this will be sort of a bit of a sneak peek at the content.
Yeah, nice.
Very cool.
Floor's yours, mate. You take us where you want to go.
You take it.
Yeah,
We're ready.
Cool.
Pretend I'm the audience.
Where are you
I'm ready
seminar
to
right
listen.
now?
We're just running there. We're going to host one now.
And so many people were like, one of the guys at work, I got him onto to have a listen to your one, and he fucking loved it. He's like, what questions you got for him? I said, bro, I ain't writing no questions. So I'm sitting there and I'm going to talk to him at the start and then I'm going to let him go.
I think, all right, preface this then. So we're going to preface the preface. Also, what we're talking about here is relevant for men as well, because massive like testosterone gets smashed by stress. So we're going to focus on females specifically because that's the event we're going to gear it towards to start with.
Yep.
But for guys who are listening, don't tune out because this is all equally disruptive to your guys' biology. So like when I referenced that Navy SEAL study before, that chronic, literally just a 7-day period, 1 week of that induced stress, it took them, not only did it smash testosterone, it was something like 15 or 18% down. So that was what natural aging would take 10 years to do. It also took something like 6 weeks to recover. So you got hammered and it didn't bounce back straight away. It wasn't like 1 week of stress, 1 week to recover. It was 1 week down, a month and a half to get back up to baseline. So these are lasting impacts. These are significant impacts, statistically and otherwise. So I think it's just, but for the guys as well, it's worth listening because a lot of the symptom pictures and things we'll talk about to spot imbalances, spot issues are also the same for men. If we're looking for what are the telltale signs if there are hormonal imbalances in ladies and guys, it's always very similar turf. It's stress, it's anxiety, it's holding stubborn body fat around your lower stomach, maybe your lower back, maybe you're holding more so with the ladies it might be also more glutes and hamstrings and around the thighs and legs too, but guys definitely hold it in very similar places, back of your arms, but the stress, the anxiety, the low libido as well, having low sex drive, finding they're not really recovering from, if they are exercising, they're not really recovering from exercising anymore. Maybe they're spinning their wheels and not really progressing. With fat, if they're trying to lose weight, they find it's very stubborn to lose weight. They might find they actually keep hitting plateaus regularly. They'll lose weight very inconsistently. It might be week 1 they lose weight, week 2 they lose weight, week 3 they hit a wall. They have to adjust calories or do more cardio or something. Week 4, lose a bit of weight. Week 5, hit a wall again. Have to drop calories again, have to adjust. They're constantly having to try and make changes to keep getting any sort of results, right? And these people find it very difficult to lose weight. They find it very difficult to build muscle. They just find their body's like resisting change. It's resisting exercise. It's resisting progression, right? So, and so I guess these certain pictures are common for men and women too, though. So guys, you don't have to tune out. This is all relevant content for you too, because the principle's the same. Stress impacts your hormones. Hormones impact mood, energy, recovery, stress, sleep, libido, literally quality of life. So, but what I want to unpack is we did a pretty good job, I think, in the first podcast of going through some of the sources of stress and some of the ways that plays out in your body. So I think we can sort of refer some people back to some of the basic concepts we spoke when we just spoke about stress as a whole. And I guess we will preface that we're talking about stressors, not just stress. So it's not, are you anxious right now when you're listening to this podcast? Are you mentally stressed? We're saying, we're talking about stressors on your body, which can be things like undereating, it can be overtraining, it can be over-caffeination. Almost everyone lives on caffeine and eats bugger all food. I cannot believe how many people undereat. It's almost everyone undereats and over-caffeinates. And then, and then we've also got, relationships and families and jobs and training and all the other stuff that we try and throw in on top of life as well, and sleep quality going to, being less than ideal, work being high stress, finances being high stress. There's lots of sources of stress, but it's not necessarily, are you anxious right now? And then finally, before I crack in, it's worthy of note that anxiety itself, although is definitely an indicator of stress, it's a symptom of stress. Anxiety isn't a condition. Anxiety is a symptom. So when people say, I have anxiety, well, no, you have a symptom of high stress hormones. So it's a symptom, not a condition. So it's, I suppose, just as an interesting sort of side note, because a lot of people now, I think it's almost trendy to say we have anxiety. It's being said.
A lot of people say it.
A lot of people say it, right? And well, of course you do, for one, because we live at such a pace now that we have so much on our plate, so much stress, so much caffeine, so little food, so much going on. People are running a redlining, right, without even realizing it. And I suppose, apart from one of your major stress hormones, adrenaline is one of them. And if you imagine giving someone a shot of adrenaline and then saying, go to your work desk and just go about your day.
Yeah.
You'd be an anxious wreck. You'd be jittery. You'd be, you'd be really, wired, right? But that's what we're doing when we're causing these stress responses in our body. We're saying release adrenaline, release cortisol, release these stress hormones, and then just go about life. And people wonder why they have anxiety. It's not a condition, it's a symptom. It's a perfect result, actually. It's your body doing what it should. It's just, unfortunately, the way we live now is a bit dysfunctional compared to how we evolved. We were meant to have a given stressor, a given stressful situation. Something we'd be attacked, we'd have to run away, we have to survive or flight or fight. Now everything is flight or fight. Whether it's a stressful call from a boss you don't want to have, juggling relationships, jobs, cost of living, juggling everything. On top of it used to be probably 12 months ago, you'd sort of talk about stress and people would be like, yeah, I'll sort of consider there might be stress. Now, so I'm going to talk about stress tonight. Everyone goes, oh, yeah. And they hear that response, right? Just
100%.
like, oh, yeah, fuck stress, cool. Like everyone now, I feel, is finally on the same page. That like, they weren't aware of it before. Now everyone is cripplingly aware. It's like a dull roar going, fuck, this is full on.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's probably even like the last 6 to 12 months, I think people have really started everyone I'm talking to at seminars and stuff is like properly approaching burnout. And they're very aware that they're very stressed, which is rare because it sort of becomes background noise for a lot of people. So, now all that being said, what we want to talk about today being how that stuff. So how those background stressors, they lead to our body liberating our stress hormones. So they're liberating adrenaline and cortisol in response to the things that it perceives as stressful. Now, where this is relevant with the ladies in particular is that we're a bit lucky as men in that our biology isn't geared towards reproduction as much as women. Now, the reason that's relevant is that if your biology is geared towards reproduction, it will always ask the question, am I safe? Do I have enough food? Am I secure? Am I stable? Do I have shelter? Do I have all the things I need to reproduce? And if the answer is no to those questions, and it will ask its environment very frequently those questions, then it will start to very quickly down-regulate primary sex hormone production in response to it, because it goes, well, if I don't have enough food, if I'm not safe, secure, stable, and have shelter, I'm not going to reproduce, because that's not in nature. We never would. So, like, if you look at how animals, that's the reason it's seasonal, right? Like, they don't just breed year round. It's usually around when there's actually abundant food, when temperatures are a little bit warmer, around spring, for example. So as opposed to middle of winter. So we seasonally, animals always paid attention to when there is food, when it's better conditions, when it's and we actually are very similar with our biology. So with the ladies, what we find is because their biology is prioritizing reproduction as the what it's looking for, it's actually it's probably more sensitive to environment almost both like male and female, it's gender neutral with like how we interpret our environment. We still all have plenty of stress, and that still smashes both of our hormones. But the difference is the primary sex hormones get really hit first because if it thinks for any reason I shouldn't be reproducing, it won't, and therefore it starts going, well, if I've got one resource that all of my hormones come from, which is cholesterol. If I've only got one place that all hormones come from, and I have to figure out, do I put that down there to make estrogen? Do I put it down here to make cortisol? Do I put it down there to make thyroid hormones? If I put it somewhere, where makes the most sense? And if the body's constantly saying, hey, I'm in flight or fight, I'm freaking out, it's going to push it all down the adrenal pathway, all down the pathway to fuel these survival hormones, to make more of those survival hormones, because your body will never let it run out. Because it goes, priority one is survival of the host, then reproduction. There's like this hardwiring in our system that is like survival of the host. Our body will never let us get in a situation where it's going to die, right? It'll go, survival is your survival hormones, which is flight or fight stuff. So you've got one source for hormones, one big job that it won't let you not do, and that's make more stress hormones. So you'll always be able to like run away from the tiger, right? But we've got a lot of tigers now, so people are making bucket loads of hormone, and it's pulling resources away from the other guys, unfortunately. So it's starting to, if you've got the one place it's all coming from, this is all oversimplified grossly, but it's pulling a lot of resources towards, I suppose, fueling that adrenaline and cortisol, that adrenal angle we call it. And that means it's robbing you from the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone pathway, all the primary sex hormones you need to have health and vitality, exuberance, good mood, and quality of life, So, and fertility and, regular cycle and what have you. So what will the ladies see if this is relevant? Well, as we said, fertility was the buzzword there. We're talking about reproduction. The stress will smash your cycle, like almost like clockwork. It will make it not clockwork. It'll disrupt it. You'll usually see irregular cycles. You might see spotting on some months. You might see it very heavy period the other one. Even if it's severe stress, even skipping periods as well, to a point where severe stress can actually cause it to stop altogether. You see this in athletes. You see this in people who've got really high pressure jobs. Like amenorrhea, we'll call it hypothalamic amenorrhea, where essentially the stress signals are so strong that resource has been robbed for so long, it downregulates sex hormone production for so long that we literally don't have the hormonal load anymore. It's like going through menopause, essentially. It's like it's going, I don't have enough hormones to actually produce a period, to release an egg, to actually bother having a period. So it stops. And this is where you get people who have gone through, comp prep diets, or gone through severe dieting phases, or severe stresses, or relationship breakdowns, or had massive life trauma events, and their cycle just gets thrown out of whack. So that's like the most obvious symptom that women have that we don't as men. It's far more obvious with women because they're lucky enough to have a cycle. We look under the hood very easily and go, sweet. Well, if you're super irregular, or it even stops altogether, or it's inconsistent, chances are there's an issue there. Yeah. So that's the first place to look. And then we roll through into body fat distribution. This is a common one too. So stress, if we've got higher stresses for the ladies, you'll notice that it makes it, because it impacts estrogen for one, it'll usually result in some imbalances downstream there. So that will usually do one of two things, but almost all of them is distribution of body fat around your lower stomach. It'll hold it onto your stomach very, very hard. It'll be very resistant to exercise too. So no matter even if they're dieting and exercising and trying to lose weight, it will hold stubborn fat, particularly like in a belt. It'll do it around their lower stomach, around their lower back, their love handles as well. Like just in a belt around here, it'll hold stubborn fat. In men, it's lower chest. In women, breast size will fluctuate. Back of the arms as well is a kicker. And then the hamstrings, glutes, like all around the legs and thighs. And it just clings. It's like impossible to move.
Yeah, my lower hips, they like it just so stubborn. Like everywhere else is just like starts to get toned, and then it's just like right there, just it ain't going.
Classic. And you'd be and what's your genetics? What's your background, like ethnicity wise? Are you like Islander or Maori?
Yeah, Islander. Yeah,
gotcha.
Maori. Yeah,
Maori. Cool. So like you guys are typically more what we call endomorphic body types, right? So endomorphs, people who build muscle easily, build strength easy, but they also usually body fat comes with it as well. So you get like the strength, like the pros are you can build muscle and strength easily. But then the negatives are endomorphs typically have slightly higher estrogen, right? And estrogen is actually quite anabolic. It's a growing hormone. Like in women, it grows another human being, right? It's a very anabolic hormone. Tricky part with estrogen is it also comes with the territory of stubborn body fat, like you said, lower back, lower hips, and so on. And typically in like Samoans and Maoris and Islanders and so on, that's why you see a lot of them grow and they're like 6'6", 150 kilo, just big human beings.
Yeah, I missed out on that part.
It'll come. Maybe like growth spurts
Never
coming.
know.
I mean, you're still tall.
You said the other day you got growing pains.
I did. My legs were in so much pain. I think it's just because I did legs.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, I feel like I've got growing pains.
We'll say it's growing pains.
Yeah, those pains you
Also, I
get.
just did legs. I was just squatting then, but it's mainly because I'm growing. I like that. Fuck, that's good. Yeah. Like that's a classic sign of like estrogen being playing out there. So see, that's quite stubborn, and it's the last place to move. I'm an endomorph too, so I can empathise with this. So it can happen with both men and women. This. And stress will lower test, and then in relativity to that testosterone, you might see that androgen ratio get played with and blah, blah. But point being, you'll see it show up physically in where your body fat's stored as well. So higher stress will invariably mean hormones get imbalanced. Imbalanced hormones will invariably lead to uneven distribution of body fat and in very stubborn areas that just don't move. They just refuse to go. Diet and exercise just doesn't respond to it. The harder you train, the more the stress goes up anyway, and holder it just clings and clings and clings. It's this real kicker. And this is why I was talking to a girl at a seminar 2-3 weeks back, and she was saying every time she goes on holidays, she loses like 5 kilos out of nowhere. She's like, I go away, I drink, I party, I have fun, let go on the diet, I just eat whatever I want. And she's like, I lose buckets of weight. She goes, it's the weirdest thing. She's like, I track my macros, track my steps, track weights, do everything. She goes, I go away, just cut loose, I lose 5-6 kilos. And she's lean. Like she was like probably a 60 kilo girl tops. She would have been 18-19% body fat. Like a lean, athletic, tracks everything, tracks meal preps, does it all. So for her to lose 5 kilos is like a shit ton of weight. Like she would only that'd be a quarter of her body fat to lose, And it was because she went away in these environments, dropped all this stress off her body from day-to-day living, career, job, training, tracking, everything, and just took all that stress off. Body goes, oh, sweet, can relax. Oh, maybe do I need to hold this stuff now? Because body fat is your body's energy stores, right? It's survival system, really. It's going, sweet, well, I need this if I lose a leg, or I need some calories stored as energy so I can, fend for myself. So your body, when you're stressed, it goes, well, actually, I'm going to keep all the fat I can because this is my future survival system. I might not find food for a while. I might not find shelter. I need calories stored. So I start storing body fat. So when people drop the stress, typically it just starts melting away. Like, and even in situations where you're eating, you're drinking alcohol, you're eating bad food and whatever, that's how powerful stress is. You still lose the weight. So it's a very powerful hormone. It'll override all other systems, but yeah, you'll see that quite often, and you start looking for it too with people. Like when they walk into a shop with me or whatever, you just go, yep, bing, and you start picking these pictures. But yeah, so that body fat distribution is very much like a classic sign of like some sort of hormonal imbalance, usually more estrogen dominance, but and also particularly the lower stomach. Guys too, if you're finding it clings to that lower stomach, that's the last place you lose it from. Stress is almost always the culprit. If you're someone who gets body scans too, high visceral fat, very, very common as well when stress is playing out. Then in the ladies too, we'll typically see, like we said, the symptom anxiety. That's a common symptom. Stress and anxiety is there. Hyperreactivity as well. If you find that you just have a very short fuse, that's very, very common as well. And then finally, we think also a bit of goldfish memory kicks in too. So they'll start like a bit foggy headed, take a while to get going in the morning. And then once they are going, they still just find it hard to just focus. Like they're just a bit all over the shop. Just put your keys down, forget where you put them, that type of thing. Writing a text, look away, look back. Oh shit, what was I doing again? Who am I talking to? You're on the phone for 10 minutes, hang up straight away. Oh, who was I calling again just then? Like you literally forget. You just goldfish memory. Yep. So really, really common, that foggy headedness, that stress and anxiety, that yo-yo sort of hyperreactivity, the hot and cold, like the mood swings and irritability. Irritability is a big one. Just everything gets to you. You just think like maybe you normally have a pretty thick skin that just paper right now, like everything offends and upsets us, and just all these sort of things play out. So, and then also we've got to sleep, which we spoke about at length in the first episode, and we I suppose all about sleep disruption as well. We'll see low REM sleep, low deep sleep, taking ages to get to sleep. You'll be wired, takes you a long time to wind down and get your head to calm down. A lot of that mental chatter. Those are all very common sort of symptoms to look for if this is a relevant conversation for you. So that's sort of how it'll show up. There's symptoms of what will happen in women if we get the higher stress. Now, I guess what we're going to go through, I'd like to hear from you guys actually what we, because this seminar we've been planning for a little while now. What are some of the techniques that you guys like? Because if we're talking about stress and how it impacts some hormones and whatever. Yep. So when you guys get people who have come in who have had chronic trauma, chronic stress, and really, you can just see that as highly strung people. Yeah. What are some of the things you guys have found have been quite handy to work them through? What do you guys use when people are really just balls of just stored tension, right?
Definitely breath work is definitely the breath controls those sympathetic nervous systems so well. So, Yeah, definitely breath, implementing 2 versions of breath. That's one version of the breath increases the sympathetic nervous system and the other one increases the parasympathetic nervous system. So, the sympathetic breath definitely focuses on like releasing traumas and processing traumas and allowing those traumas to come through their system. It could be through, like crying, screaming. We just did a breathwork session with the Reconnection women last Sunday, so a few days ago. And I think it took them 2 minutes, if that.
Literally, one of the girls, so at the start of it, I get them to go through just a normal breath in through your nose, out through your nose, just a nice slow breath. And then I'll start to get him into the breath, and literally a minute, 2 minutes, they just drop straight into it. They went for a day, and then I think the whole thing went for about 20 minutes. Normally we go anywhere from half an hour to 45. So I think it's 25 minutes max. So we cut it off.
So that type of breath is at the end of the day. So by the time we get to that at the end of the day, it's already at the surface, if that makes sense. It's already been coming up as it is. So we get him into that breath and all of a sudden it's like that. So
is that a winding up breath or is that coming down one?
That's winding up. Winding up breath at the end. And we implement the calming down breath just after the ice bars. So they've jacked their system, come back into the room, and then we do the calming breath. So without saying what it specifically is, it's more of a motion of it's in through your nose, out through your nose. But the way that we deliver it, it's thinking of a wave coming up over the body, comes to the top, crashes, and then the water coming back out. That's you breathing out of your body. And it's more of a visual representation of the wave coming in. So you're increasing your body, crashes at the top, and then you flow back out. And it's more of just a visual representation of seeing that coming in. So, those 2 things and implementing those at the events is something that's, especially when people can take those 2 things home as well.
Yeah, because you can use those breaths in anywhere. I did it this morning. I did a cardio session this morning, and it was all nasal breathing. And what I was doing in between, so when I'd walk between machines, I was just going, just slowing it right down, and then on a machine that I knew it was going to take a lot of breath out of me, I was just all I was focused on was just that nice slow breath through the whole thing. And it's just you can use it there, or if you do feel like you're getting a bit anxious, you can use it then as well. So you can pretty much, Tyson, one of my mates who I work with, we're driving home today, and he was real tired, and he was just because he's a go person, and I looked over and he had his eyes closed, and he was just going, and I was just watching him. I was like, "What are you doing?" And he's just calming myself down. And I was like, "Nice, it's good to watch."
Well played.
Yeah,
it's a good way of doing things. It's so fun. It's interesting having these ways of doing it, because I've always just done it I suppose, obviously we all go to where we come from. So I come from supplements. So I'll use people throughout the day. I'll use adaptogens like Restore and so on. They'll use adaptogenic herbs like your ashwagandhas and rhodiolas and schizandras and lemon balms and holy basils and all these nice, very old plants that'll do similar things, where they'll modulate your nervous system and wind down stress when you're too high, or if you're a bit flat, it'll pick you up and that sort of thing. And it's interesting how you hearing the different schools and how they do it is cool actually, because it's and it's remarkable actually. I didn't pay attention enough, I think, to how potent perception is. So I think so when you're saying even just visualizations, right? They've in many instances they've proven you can just visualize a stressful situation and it's an identical stress response to them being in a similar one. So it's remarkable. But actually, one thing while we're on stress responses, one of the most common that I see that I've started talking about a little bit more recently is alcohol. So I think it's sort of a very socially accepted part of culture, but I don't think it's actually understood exactly how acutely stressful that is for the body.
Yeah.
And it's worth talking about because it's a lot of people's coping mechanism.
It's a lot, yeah.
I seen Billy Coffey's reel that you reshared the other day. That was very insightful on that. That was cool.
So we did a seminar there at Pinpoint, which was unreal. So Billy was kind enough to put on a really good event where we spoke about some of the impacts of stress for athletes. He's got some guys that take it real serious, guys who really kill themselves in training. And but they also enjoy a drink on a weekend,
sure.
And I suppose you sort of assume if Monday to Friday they're strict as Billy just smokes them in the gym, just kills them. They're all watching. Most of them are pretty clean eating, big on food, looking at everything. He's looking at hydration, looking at all of it. Then on the weekend, go out and have drinks and so on. And the amount of studies I can quote that are just how deleterious alcohol is on every system in the body. We forget that it's that ethanol is a poison, right? Like our liver metabolizes it, break it down to formaldehyde, which you'd find as a compounding glue. Like I suppose it's a very, very, it's a very potent and very toxic substance to our body. So what our body does is it ramps up acutely all of its clearance systems, all of its metabolisms to break that down. So it uses these enzymes, your cytochrome P450 enzymes to break that down at an accelerated rate, but it causes a very acute stress response, which is ironic because when you drink alcohol, it also boosts GABA, and GABA is a calming neurotransmitter, right? So GABA is the sort of neurotransmitter. The feeling you'd get if you had GABA elevated would be if you had just had a warm shower, nice warm bath, you're winding down, you're like, that nice calm, everything's cool, winding down. Typically you see GABA elevate around bedtime. So it's like that nice, just calm, easy going. It's the exact opposite to stress, basically, is GABA. And it increases GABA. But at the same time, alcohol acutely causes a very, very significant stress response and disrupts sleep quality, which will chronically cause more stress. So humans started talking on alcohol recently, how like more chronic consumption will lead to chronically elevated stress over time. So you get more stress response to a given stressful event. And you're going through life, something comes up. If you drink alcohol regularly, you'll have a bigger stress response to that event than if you didn't drink alcohol regularly. So it'll make you more stressed in any given situation. It'll disrupt the sleep quality, which means you'll have chronically more stress ongoing because broken sleep acutely increases stress. And then even to like, if they want to get a reliable stress response, so in rodent studies, they got rats, they would give them straight ethanol to cause a known measurable stress response. That was how they standardized it. They had rodents, they went, I want to actually create a stress study. They give them ethanol. They give them straight alcohol, and it creates a reliable stress response in their body. It freaks the body out. And so alcohol is like, ironically, what most people drink to wind down, and it's the single most stressful thing. Now, it also lowers testosterone in men, and it increases estrogen. So we just spoke on it for 15 minutes talking how estrogen makes body fat cling to all the stubborn areas on your body. Estrogen imbalance can lead to a slower metabolism. It can lead to poor blood sugar control, craving sugary and fatty foods, having a sweet tooth, poor sleep and stress and anxiety. All these things that having imbalances with estrogen can cause, right? We're drinking something that lowers testosterone, increases estrogen, smashes gut health, increases stress hormones, decreases sleep quality. So it's a socially acceptable drug, but it's a terrible drug. And it's
So what can people do to like around estrogen or like testosterone, like to bring those levels back up?
Yeah, of course. So I go from the supplemental place. There's some cool herbs. So I love in testosterone. I like Tongkat Ali is really cool. Tongkat is one of the ginseng families, Malaysian ginseng or Eurocoma longifolia. It's a really cool plant. They issue about 200 milligrams of that twice a day will increase free testosterone about 37%. It'll also decrease cortisol about 16% at the same dosage. So that's pretty powerful. 37, like reducing a hormone nearly 40% is massive, right? That's a huge, huge thing. So it'll increase free testosterone 37% and then decrease cortisol 16%. I also like bulbine. Bulbine natalensis is an African aphrodisiac, and it increased free total testosterone by 40%. And then it also was for if you're someone who's the stress smashes the libido, bulbine also it actually beat Viagra in a placebo-controlled study for arousal, for perceived arousal. So it's incredibly potent. So the Africans use it as an aphrodisiac. So it's a very, very potent modulator of sex drive and libido, but it also increases total testosterone quite highly. So bulbine natalensis is fantastic. And then I also like shilajit and ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is a great one because it'll increase testosterone through basically taking the burden of stress off the body. Ashwagandha is a really awesome adaptogen that people who come along to these days, I'll talk about at length about how it'll help take the stress off your body and help your body adapt and your nervous system adapt to a stressful environment. And by taking that stressful burden off the body, as we were talking about with the reproduction conversation, if we have this chronic stress over here, our body's going to down-regulate to feed resources over there. So what it can do, if we can take that signal over here off, it'll go, oh, sweet, well, I can start pushing resources back down towards the primary sex hormone pathways. So it can help to basically tell your body to go, no, start prioritizing hormones again. Start sending resources where it's needed. So ashwagandha is really good. And shilajit's wicked. I love shilajit. That stuff's really good for, like, it increased sperm motility, so healthier sperm by like 40%, increased total sperm production by 63%. Huge. So anyone who's looking at testosterone from the angle of fertility, wanting to have kids, or just even in general for themselves, just wanted to be healthy and fertile and virile. That's shilajit's wicked, and it also makes you a lot more resilient It helps with nutrient absorption, helps with energy production. Really, really cool. So Shilajit, Tonkat Ali, Bulbine natalensis, ashwagandha, they're like studied through and through. Awesome data, all human as well. Bit of rodent, but a lot of human data too. So that's a good one. Now, for estrogen, the supplements I like for those, depending on where they're at in the spectrum, Vitex is one of my favorites. So Vitex is a really awesome herb. A lot of like naturopaths use Vitex when there's hormonal imbalances floating around. It's otherwise known as chasteberry. It's a really, really cool sort of very natural herbal supplement, but it'll very potently modulate production of things like progesterone for one. So to get a period to be actual regular, it requires a delicate dance of estrogen and progesterone, and Vitex will stimulate the production of progesterone, which is the part that basically comes along and tells the period to mature, release an egg and have and actually function. So for fertility, progesterone is crucial, but it also balances it offsets when we have dominance of estrogen. So when we're talking about all that stubborn body fat stuff, well, that's when estrogen gets too high. So Vitex will stimulate its antagonist, progesterone, to balance things and bring things back into balance. It'll also lower prolactin, and it'll also boot dopamine a lot. So if you're someone who struggles with, because of those imbalances, you've got stress and anxiety and low motivation and low mood, Vitex is going to boot that dopamine through the roof and get you really motivated. So it's a really good one for mood, really good one for balancing progesterone, estrogen, helping with fertility, and it gets your cycle like clockwork. Really, really good. And then you got to look at stuff for liver as well. So you want to look at, your NAC is really good. N-acetylcysteine is really popular now. So NAC is a really great one to use. It'll help support liver function, phase 2 detoxification, inflammation as well. Massive antioxidant potential for oxidative stress. So NAC's really cool too. So I like Vitex, I like NAC. DIM, D-I-M, DIM's really good as well. So there's some of the three sort of heavy hitters, I'd say, on the estrogen side of the fence. They're good sort of supplements to use. They're the things that I formulate with when I'm making hormonal products. I'll typically build my formulas around things that work on usually the stress system, liver, and I suppose detoxification, and then I try and look at supporting those primary sex hormones. But it's amazing. I've had people do bloods for me on all the different formulas I've built. So I've had like 8 people do blood work on my testosterone formula. I've had guys that are in there. I had a guy that was 26, right? So he was only in his mid-20s, owned a gym, was a PT, was shredded himself, like he was in amazing shape. And we did his bloods before, and his testosterone was down to like 8. Now, the range is 8 to 30. And this dude's in his 20s, shredded. He's a PT who teaches other people how to be in good shape. He's a walking set of abs. Like this guy, you'd look at and go, he's like the picture of health, right? His testosterone was that of like a 70-year-old man at 26. I started asking him, man, what's happened to you, right? Like, how can you have the testosterone of an old man in your 20s, despite being fit, lean, training, active, tracking everything? And he'd had a relationship breakdown, running a small business. So obviously all the crushing pressures of, staff and cash flow and whatever. So he had financial stresses, a relationship breakdown, and was working long hours. Just stress. Smashed it. Kid in his 20s. Testosterone of a 70-year-old man. And it was remarkable. So this is really, really impactful. And same with women. I've had so many women that they haven't had a period for a year. They've had a really stressful situation, maybe like a relationship breakdown, moved into state, a job fell through, gone through a comp prep where they've been through extreme dieting phases for long periods of time, and they haven't had their period back for a year afterwards. Like, it takes a long time to recover from these big stress events. So, it's been a bit of a interesting journey seeing how much this impacts both men and women, but obviously our talk will gear towards the girls. So but I've seen it on both sides of the fence too. So for the guys, like, it's really worth paying attention to what are the big rocks you can move in your life to try and help balance some of the stress out.
Oh man, I'm thinking so much shit in my head at the moment. I'm like, I can't wait to get out of here. Got so much shit I need to do.
What are some of your big rocks, I'd say, for stress? Because most people, when you ask them what would be your sources of stress, they can usually pick it. And we'll try and see if we can't find some relevant lifestyle hacks or sub hacks to try and work around it. So you're
definitely work hours.
Yeah,
which is like, so I'm up at 2:30, and then I had to go to bed at 8. So it's a
big day.
Big day. Yeah.
2:30
So it's a lot of like working 2 jobs, and then like stresses of that job, and then the stresses that we both have here. It's just comes a fair bit.
That's a good one where you can, and especially that early morning rise, right? So a few things there. Circadian rhythm getting a little bit. I suppose because 2:30 it's a tricky one. Hey, I do the same. I get about 3:30 to 4:30, somewhere in that bracket. And when you start creeping in the earlier hours of the morning, you sort of, if you think about most people, our body's got a really unique system in it. It's this amazing nuclear clock, and it's in the roof of our mouth, weirdly enough. This is the weird part. And the pineal glands in the eyes sense light and then use that light to determine, basically feed information to this nucleus to tell our body, and every single cell in your whole body, is it day, night, when we're going to sleep tonight. So when you see light in the morning, your body knows exactly when it's going to sleep. So it sets the clock. Second, you get light exposure in the morning, it'll tell you, sweet. Now, tricky part is when you wake up 2 a.m., there's no sun for 5 hours. So it's
well, I wake up with that. I got a sunrise clock that I use to wake up instead of
yeah.
using sound. So I just use that clock that'll tell me, all right, it's time to get up.
It's a nicer way to wake up too.
It's so good.
Nice.
It's been. I haven't woken up to alarm in I don't even know how long.
Good way to do it, man. Because that's you think about how you start the day, perception, right? That's a big thing. I like a lot of people associate alarms with like negativity, and with I think that's very important. That's really cool little hack. But and look, even light exposure is a good life hack for a lot of people. We'll obviously go through a lot more of the life hacks in person as well at this event. But one of the favorite ones is light exposure and timing your light exposure and trying to make sure, whether it's even if you are an early riser and it's like it's dark for 3 hours, so I get up and just every light in the house on, try and get as much light as we can. And if you're lucky enough to wake up near sunny time, then it's usually about 8 to 12 minutes of direct sun exposure is more than enough to set your circadian rhythm, set off your cortisol clock, set your cortisol rhythm nicely as well, get your whole body in tune and aligned with how it's going to be for the day. And it's interesting, about 15 hours after you first see sun is when you go to bed. So it's like predetermined. When you wake up and you hit light, 15 hours later, I'm going to be in bed. So you get up at 6 a.m., 9 p.m., down you go, right? And it's just as soon as you get that light in, but the tricky part is we also bring light into our evenings by having lights. So that's the other downside. So it's get light in the morning, then don't get light at night. Is the other hack to that. So
I like that. Yeah, because the way I worked out to get like these hours of like awake and go to sleep was when I was in the mines, I'd go to bed at like 9:30, 10.
Yeah,
I'd be up at like 3, and it was just like it was so stressed from that, and then transitioning out of that, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to bed at 9:30. I'll wake up at 5 or 6, doing this type of work, and then it wasn't really working either. Like I'd still get through the day, and I was so tired, I felt like shit. Yeah. So then I just sat when I was going through my sleep, like working it out. I'd always wake up around at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock time, and I'd be awake. But then I'd have to I was like, oh shit, I've still got a few more hours to go. Like I don't have to be out for another few hours. I'll go back to bed. That would fuck me up. So I was like, all right, and I could always fall asleep super early. So I could always fall asleep anywhere between 6 and 8.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, so my hours, I'm really good between those hours. So I was like, all right, what's going to work? And then I worked out 8 p.m. I have to be asleep, and then I'm going to wake up around 2:33, and then I'm good.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
A lot of people actually listening, if you're going to bed at a normal time too, feel like a lot of people say they go to bed at 9, 10 p.m. They still wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. and they might find they're really alert. So this happens with a host of people. So a lot of people that I'll be around, they'll report this as a sort of side effect when there's usually stresses on. One, they either toss and turn throughout the night, or they get up to go to the bathroom once or twice or whatever. But another one is they'll get up at they'll wake up, get up to go to the bathroom throughout the night, and be like, oh, I'm feeling pretty damn good. Look at the clock and it's like 2 a.m. So there's a little window between, it's somewhere between 2 and it's about 2 and 3 usually. Depends. Some people it's a bit early depending on your body clock, but somewhere in that window, 2, 3 a.m. is where your cortisol starts climbing a little bit naturally, starts coming up. Now, if it's elevated though, if you pick, for anyone listening versus watching on YouTube, there's we're doing a curve here, but if you picture, it normally starts climbing around 3. It'll do a bit of a imagine like a parabola, like a bell curve. You'd see, right?
Yep.
So if it starts climbing around 3, now the tricky part is if you've had a pretty stressful day the day before and that's still elevated, instead of it going like that, climbing up at 3, spiking at 4, 5, up at 6, it might already be high enough that it's like at high enough levels to wake you at 3. Then you're really alert at 4. Then you're like, it just brings that spike, it shifts it. So, and that can be a case of where then because it's shifted earlier, it also brings the whole curve. It's like that. It shifts it for you. So like you said, now you've just built your day around that, which is you're still getting the same total sleep hours and what have you. But a lot of people who have this problem, but they don't get up at 2:30, they have an office job say, and they're like, hey, I don't need to be up till 7. And it's actually a big issue because they're going, why can't I stay asleep? Why am I getting up at 2 a.m. and feeling like it's morning and blah, blah. It's because their cortisol's so high from the day before, it's actually starting to climb then. It's where most people actually die, funnily enough, in hospitals, right? most of the weaker hours between midnight and 2 a.m. is where most deaths occur. Because cortisol is a very powerful hormone. It regulates whether you like blood pressure, heart rate, energy, metabolism, immune system function, like all of it is all governed by this survival system. And it's at its lowest between midnight and 2 a.m. So when cortisol is at its lowest, it's when the immune system is least activated, when everything's really wound down. And that's where a lot of deaths occurred. So when what they do, like all the nurses and stuff would come in and like get in the wards and really like, windows open, like wake up, get all the sun in, get all the lights on, like really try and get people up, trying to spike that cortisol to get that back on to regulate all those systems and boot them up. And that was how they try and, I suppose, get patients to get up, switch that, get that immune system back and get everything moving again, switch off inflammation and get everyone going, So it's quite a good, I bash it a lot, cortisol, but it's got some really positive effects too. But that's interesting you said that time you noticed you'd wake up anyway.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people say that when they'll wake up throughout the night and just can't go to sleep.
Well, that's how it used to be even before I was taking Restore. It'd be like that. I'd wake up at 2 and I'd be like fucking awake and then I'd try and go back to sleep.
Yeah,
and then I started taking Restore and then it like pushed me to like have those deeper sleeps. So when I was waking up, I was sweet. Because I was getting up there anyway where I wasn't like having like 4 hours sleep, 4.5 hours sleep, then going and get up and try and do my day. Because I've worked at 2 is like, so I'd get up, go to the gym, go to work, and then around like 2 to 3, I wouldn't be just like a big crash like it used to be. It'd be like, I'll be like, okay, I got to start slowing down. 6 o'clock comes around, 6:30, 7, I'm getting a little bit slower. Like yesterday, I was a little bit, like not heightened, but I was like, I didn't feel very tired.
Yeah.
And I did one of our breath works, like the nervous reset. And I did that, and like 15 minutes later, I was like, oh.
It's amazing how much you
I was so calm, and I was just like, boom, straight into bed.
Takes that edge off, hey? Because a lot of people are running around on edge.
Yeah.
And they'll tell, if you ask them, they'll tell you. Like, if like, how are you feeling, how are you holding? I'm sure you guys probably hear it when they're talking about how they are.
Massively.
They're on edge. They're wired. And they literally are. It's
well, no one's taught, like, well, unless you do this type of work, like you're not really taught how to control your nervous system, like at school or anything. Like it's just pretty much just like you get taught to just work your ass off to get to where you want to be.
Bingo. It's a remarkable thing with the whole like societal programming part of it too, because we get conditioned to, go up, work through school, work through uni, work through life, work, hustle. And now like it's an interesting one because like the whole hustle culture is big now too. And look, I'm saying this is a bit of a hypocritical workaholic, but there's a lot of, for some it's very important to get a good role model on how hard you need to work to get where you need to be. But the tricky part is we're so overstimulated, overworked, we're under eating in a lot of cases because people will usually skip breakfast or skip lunch but have a coffee.
Yeah.
Have a light lunch on the go if they remember throughout the working day, go home, have dinner, binge as they can, clean the cupboard out, but you're still probably in a massive calorie deficit regardless, but you've had 2 or 3 coffees to get you through the day and you're just running on pure adrenaline all day. And then there's this, societal norm of work harder, faster, do more, be productive, do gym, do work, be a partner, be a parent, be everything. And it's just so overwhelming. People just, and so I guess and some of these things like sleep, we'll talk about heaps at this event.
Yeah.
Because so much of the data that comes out of if you can try and give your body one catcher's mitt, it's that 8 hours. That's the biggest thing we can really modulate stuff with.
Have you heard Matt Fraser speak about sleep? The CrossFit, the guy.
No. What's his opinion on it? Or how's he approach sleep?
So because he's like so good, he's like 5-time world champion or 6-time, whatever it was.
Yep.
He the way he recovered was through his sleep. So he did all these different types of studies. Like that's how I got the sunrise clock from. The idea I got it from him.
Cool.
Yeah, and he had a few other heaps of ideas I can't remember at the top of my head, but he had like all these things that he'd do, like certain times he'd go to sleep, certain air temperature. He'd always have his room set to a certain temperature.
Yeah, very good.
So like when he went into there, it was like it just dropped him down to that deeper sleep.
It's a good idea. I do it with a fan. Same. So the reason that body temperature is important is your body's got this natural thing that it follows, and your body temperature is at its lowest at your deepest point of sleep. So you're meant to, and like if you think about it, it's like your nervous system with breathing. Breathing will stimulate vagus nerve. Vagus nerve tells your body what to do. Like you've got this, these old systems that run these old architectures, right? And they all feed off each other. They all create this cascade. It's like a domino series, right? So if body temperature drops, your body goes, oh, this is what happens when I sleep deeply, right? So then it goes, oh, well, if I'm meant to be sleeping deeply right now, I should wind down cortisol because cortisol is meant to be low when I'm sleeping. So I'll wind some stress down. Okay. Oh, but if cortisol's low too, melatonin should start being produced because I'm about to sleep. So I need to get melatonin higher till it switch off. So it'll start producing melatonin. And it goes, oh, I need to increase GABA tone as well. So I'll increase some GABA production. That'll calm me down as well, take the edge off when we sleep. And so it starts this cascade that happens. So doing these things, it's like why having a hot shower before bed is quite therapeutic, right? And it can get you to a deeper sleep. It's because by having the extreme heat, like having a hot shower, then our body hyper responds by, we're going, oh fuck, we're too hot, cools it down, and in the cooling starts the cascade. So a hot shower is a good one, actually, a great way of getting a hack in. Like I'll throw down my Restore. If I've had a big seminar done, like evening work, I'll have Restore and have a hot shower, and it'll really, it's a really good one too. Then throw a fan on. Get in bed and throw a fan on, and it just drops that temp straight down. So like playing with body temperature, playing with like heat and cold, and then like it can be a really great way to.
I'm gonna give that one a go. Give that a go tonight for sure.
There's even some companies over in the States who have built businesses around their products are, what's it, the chill pad, I think it is. It's like an underlay that goes under you. Instead of like an electric blanket heating you up, it actually cools you down. It keeps like basically just a slight coolness under it. Because like ironically, if you sleep, I don't know if anyone's ever done this, if you sleep in pajamas or sleep with too many blankets on, you actually can wake up throughout the night and like hot with dry mouth and dehydrated as well. We don't want to be too hot when we sleep. Enough to be comfortable and so on, obviously, but you don't actually want to be hot because that'll send that direct like signal to not. It's sort of a counter signal, right? So we're meant to be lowering body temperature here, not sitting really hot all evening. It's going to keep us out of that. So to get that deep sleep, that's right. It's modulating that. That is really important. And light exposure is the biggest thing I can talk about. Like we evolved for hundreds of thousands of years to go up with the sun and down with the sun. And then all of a sudden, in a very, very, like in a grain of sand on the beach of human existence, we brought in artificial lights in the evenings. There wasn't even street lights in the 50s. Like it's only been the last little speck of human existence we've had lights, artificial lights in our environment, right? So if you think about what that means is if our eyes are detecting this light, and the eyes are directly connected to your brain, like it's remarkable. Actually, they're actually offshoots of your brain. They'll start telling you it's going daytime. During the day, cortisol's high because we're meant to be up and have energy and move around. And this is how people can get home from work and be absolutely buggered, sit on the couch, got all your lights on, TV on, phone on, scrolling, all this stimulus, all this light, and they might find it takes them 3 or 4 hours to get to bed, even though they walked in the door cooked. And I see this so many the parents all the time. It says you walk in and you're shattered, and somehow you still find you don't get to bed till 2 a.m. Because you'll ask them and they say, "Oh, when do you go to bed?" "Oh, midnight." "Why? Do you want to go to bed at midnight?" "Oh no, like are you busy?" No, I'd love to sleep sooner." "Why aren't you?" I just sit up or watch a movie, or I'll sit there and scroll for a while or what have you. And it's just that because we've got that background adrenaline from the day, just go. We get here, try and sit still. It's like that adrenaline sit still conversation, right? Go. So what do? You keep your mind distracted, busy, numb it, distract it. Do whatever you can. Social media, phones, TVs, music, whatever the fuck you can to distract your mind from being so busy. But because of that, it's this irony because that stimulus stimulates you, keeps that cortisol high. And then so it's this self-perpetuating system. You don't get it till 2 a.m. You have your 4 hours of shit sleep, wake up, oh, I'm cooked, do it all again. Reach for caffeine, skip the food, away we go.
Interesting.
So it's all about trying to break the cycle because it's a self-perpetuating one. All these systems work off each other, and inversely, you can try and if we can course correct them, you can course correct a lot of areas at once. So if you can work on stress, you also in men boost testosterone. In women, you also increase fertility and cycle regularity, and you improve body fat distribution and body composition. You improve all these areas by dealing with one thing. And like light exposure, really big. Morning, really important. Night, not so, really important not to have it around. We don't want stimulus. In the evenings, we don't want to have, I suppose, the caffeination. We don't want to have anything caffeinated after about 1 p.m. It's a golden rule. Like it takes about 8 hours to clear caffeine from your system entirely. So you're having 200 coffee is about 100 milligrams of caffeine for a single shot. A double shot 200 megs, and it takes half life is 4 to 5 hours. So if you have a double shot coffee, at lunchtime, well, at 200 milligrams of caffeine, the half life, so it's at 100 milligrams at 4 or 5 p.m. Then it takes another 4 to 5 hours to clear that 100 megs. So imagine being at 5 p.m. when you get home, be trying to leave work, start to wind down, and have a Red Bull worth of caffeine. It's still there, stimulating that nervous system.
That was my go-to when I was in the pub. Start work at 4.
Okay, that's
double shot coffee, straight into it.
Yeah, and man, night work's a whole. Shift work just stacks the deck. So unfortunately,
Oh man, when I was underground up at Orange, you'd have a coffee at like 6 in the afternoon, and you'd be like, "Here we go, another 12-hour shift." Then you'd wake up in the morning, and you'd be like, "We got to drive home, have a coffee."
It's fucking crazy, man. Shift work is a brutal one on the body. Hey, I've got to almost start. I've got to almost start doing shift work separate talks because it's big here in the Hunter where we're filming this podcast. It's massive, man. We've got quite a few hospitals up here. So we've got nurses, paramedics. We've also got jails. So we've got jail workers as well are on shift work. We've got mining, which is obviously a massive employer for this industry.
Yeah,
we've got huge industry around here as well. So fabricators and tradies and stuff. There's so many, like all these industries are on shift work. It was something like 24% of Australia's workforce is shift workers, which is massive. You wouldn't think it's that high. Hey, it's fucking massive.
Wild.
It is massive. So you got a lot of people who are literally completely inverting their entire biology, and then trying to live with with no catcher's mitt. So it's a really your work. Yeah, work in itself is already at a pace now that's cracking. But yeah, shift work on top. So what we're going to try and do is in this day and run through, because we've sort of spoken about the sources of some stresses, what it does to biology, what are some of the early hacks with the sleep and light manipulation, and even look at body temperature and heat and so on. And then in the day, we're going to go through a bit more in depth. We can start diving into how to implement these properly, how to really do a deep dive on specifics of it, pull out studies on what those will look like. And then we could also talk about the supplemental stuff as well. Because both times I don't think we even actually touched on subs, with the exception of that testosterone section. So I'll start also teaching people what herbs to use and what doses and how to throw that around. So,
and then we'll incorporate ice bars, parasympathetic breath work.
Beautiful. That's going to tie in well.
It'll be a really, really cool tie in.
Modulate the nervous system both with with some life hacks, with some practices as well.
Yeah.
Teach you how to do it with supplementation, and then with the idea of how to take that burden of the stress off the body and really educate on nutrition, supplementation, hormones, all of it. So it's going to be a cracker event. I'm stoked for this one, actually.
So this podcast can get you all fired up for it and get ready for it to
it's like a little,
start coming in.
Like a little tease. It just gives you all of the negatives and then none of the solutions.
So come to the talk. We'll give you all the solutions.
We will. We'll give you guys the rundown. And look, by all means, for a refresher, we covered some pretty decent life hacks and stuff like that in episode 1 as well. So I just wanted to more so just highlight. Just get people mindful and conscious of it. Start listening to your body. Start looking for some of these things. Are you foggy-headed? Is your libido shot? Are you pretty cooked at work? You're finding you're flying off the handle a bit more than you used to? Is your fuse a little bit shorter than it used to? Are you taking ages to get to bed?
It was that podcast that made it change.
Yeah,
that made me go through all that to like really look at my life and where I could do better in and what I could change. Like I'm pretty sure I changed gyms and everything. Like I was just like, it was because I wasn't training because. Like I was training at a CrossFit gym, and the classes are like early morning, like 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and then after those are 5 and 6, and I couldn't make them. So I was just like, I wasn't training, so I was like, all right, there's another one. I'm going to change gyms, so to go to a gym where I can just train anytime I want. So that changed, and all the sleep changed, like dieting, like everything.
And overtraining's man, this is a cracker one. So actually, like talking of training, right? It is one of the most powerful things we can do, just like an ice bath. It's purposely putting your nervous system through hell to make it more resilient over time, right? So like training is like. Exercise is a great catcher's mitt, and you see this in all health issues when people are talking about metabolic diseases, heart disease, stroke, whatever it is. All-cause mortality, when people exercised for 200 minutes per week, all-cause mortality reduced 44%. All-cause mortality, not singular ones, nearly halved. That's not even 40 minutes a day. It's 28 minutes per day.
Crazy.
Literally half hours of exercise a day, and you can halve your chance of dying from anything. So it's the most potent catcher's mitt. Exercise is phenomenal. Exercise and sleep, honestly. It like we're looking for sexy, jingly things, as you know, the cure-alls, but our body has some very fundamental systems that respond very, very potently to some very basic needs. Humans, we have a need for safety, connection, food, shelter. And we've got some very old systems with some very basic wiring, but we managed to fuck it up really well in modern society. So
I find that so much. Like mostly men. I'm not in control of my emotions, and they're expecting me to come back with like, this magic spell of being able to create like this, control over emotions. I'm like, what's your diet like? Oh yeah, it's not great. Okay, are you training? Yes and no. Are you meditating? No. come back to me when you're looking at those 3 things, and then we'll talk about some other processes. Don't skip the foundations. Don't skip those pieces that are fundamental.
Everyone's got the pyramid upside down right now.
Yeah.
Like if you look at the pyramid, like the base should be the heavy hitters and should make up the majority of what you do.
Yeah.
The base is the sleep, the exercise, the nutrition. Then you go the next step up the pyramid and it gets a little bit smaller. And you go, okay, now you might look at how you train, what time of day, and so on and so forth. Next one might be, okay, throw in some supplementation to help with what you're doing, bro. And you keep going up, you get the point. And at the pointy top, you might start looking at stuff like cutting out wheat and grains and seed oils, and you like get down to the real nitty gritty shit at the top. Most people start at, I'm going to go paleo and dairy free for fun this week, and they start at the top of the pyramid and they skip all the under they sort of invert that pyramid.
Yeah,
and it's like no, don't skip the last steps and then just go bash like fucking soy for a week. Like do this, like do it properly, work through the basal steps, and those ones will be the biggest catches mitts towards the impacts of the big scary stuff. But and what really like drove this home for me for the importance of it, I read a really good book by Gabor Mate. So he's a really well-known psychologist, and Gabor was a physician for 21 years over in Canada as well. So he was a GP before he was a psychologist, and went through and treated a lot of sick people. And he started interviewing them basically, and a lot of them with chronic autoimmune diseases, cancers, lots of really bad stuff. And a lot of these people were quite young too, which is scary. Like these are 34, 36, 42 with terminal cancers and autoimmune diseases. And he was interviewing them. A lot of the stuff that he found there as a common theme was a lot of repressed emotional trauma, inability to say no, basically a lot of repressed, stored trauma and stress and sources of stress. There'd be early trauma and then usually an inability to express it through the body. And we're lucky that, and what he found is this link between chronic stress and autoimmune diseases and cancers and dysfunctions in the body and increases in stress. Like and the inability to let that out as well. And exercise is one of the more physical ways, in the way the book wrote it, which is actually no, that was Chris Creer. He was another psychologist that wrote about it, calling it completing the stress response. So your stress response to a stressor is the body boots out adrenaline. It puts you in flight or fight, and then we just get told to go sit at a desk and do our job. We're not completing the actual system. What should happen is we have that, like those flight or flight hormones come out, we punch or run, then we get to run back down. We never punch or run, right? So exercise can be a great way of ramping up stress, releasing physically that stress. Go fucking punch a bag, go like lift up weights, go deadlift something, go pull something off the ground heavy, go exert yourself physically, metabolize that adrenaline, metabolize that cortisol, and actually complete the stress response. Then your body can go, oh, sweet, dealt with it. And your body doesn't know the difference between it like chemically, it's all actually surprisingly ignorant for such a clever system. If you've like very heavily physically exerted yourself, it assumes you've run away from the tiger.
Yeah.
Go for a jog. People say, I feel great after a run. I feel, I'm stressed, I'll go for a jog, and it just clears your head.
A good one Jacob taught us was, and we do it in our anger releases, he's like, wake up in the morning, even if you're not angry, but release that energy. Yeah. So like grab your pillow and just scream into it. So when I did his shift, I was doing that a fair bit. Like I'd just wake up in the morning and then I'd just go for the day, and like I was just a lot more calmer. Like I wasn't so heightened straight away. Yeah, it was more just like my reaction was a bit different than what it used to be.
You know what did that for me? Caffeine, delaying caffeine too. This is the final one before we wrap up. Was not having caffeine, A, on an empty stomach, or B, when I immediately woke. This change. You were on this, I think, just around that last podcast
90 minutes? Time. 90 minutes after wake up? Yeah. Game changer.
Changed my whole fucking existence, man.
Fucking changer.
Because I was like fighting that hard. Because when you get up at 3 a.m., I want my fat burner, right? I get up, have my metabolism, and go, sweet, let's go for a walk, like let's go. And I have that nice little, and it's not a heavily caffeinated product. I only put 125 megs of caffeine, like same as a single shot of coffee, It's not a big hit, but it's just I get up, go for my walk, then I go to gym and so on. A bit of caffeine would be really nice to get me through. But I thought, fuck it, I'll just try it. And when I did finally, when you do introduce the caffeine an hour and a half later, it's remarkable. You don't have that heightened feeling. No. You don't have that wired, just cracked out, sort of like just barely holding on type vibe, or where you're a bit, and it becomes almost addictive being that wired too. Like you seek the feeling going, like I really just like being like on, like really just on, But you realize that's your nervous system at like maximum activation. That's not a place you should sit. Your default system should be calm, collected, energized but calm. Is the way that a really, really awesome. When I was over in Europe, Yogi actually told me. But it was like seeing that was a really interesting concept. Was like just being energized but calm. So just being centered and grounded, right? But and that's why probably people find it hard to be grounded in society as well.
Massively.
Well, the first thing, it was like the same people. First thing they do is get up, go straight for a coffee.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And it's like dumping on an empty stomach with nothing else in your system.
Yeah.
Stress. And straight away. It's cortisol. Boom.
Well, I used to do the gym until probably like 3 weeks ago. I used to do the gym first, then come home and have brekkie.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I've worked it out. There's like have it before I go, and I just my energy levels are so much better. And I come back, I still don't have a coffee. I just have something else to like to eat, and then I don't have a coffee till about 5 o'clock, 5:30. And it's just so much difference.
Oh, it is. Actually, food before, because I used to train fasted for like 7 years, right? I was a big fan of it, because again, it's 2 a.m., right? We don't want to eat.
No.
But I was like, so I've just started doing like, even just like powdered carbs in my pre, or putting, having just a banana or something, like, just trying to get something sugary, and like having honey in a cup, like whatever I can get, just simple sugars. And that buffers it heaps too, because insulin is a direct antagonist to cortisol. So if you can get that insulin high, get that blood sugar up, you're able to go, sweet, I'm fed, I'm all good.
Yeah.
It blunts that cortisol release a bit, and it's you just get so much more. It's so much more level through your workout, and then in the morning you don't then crash heaps either. And so like carbs around workout times, like people get scared of carbs, but like it throwing in some, like having a good amount of simple sugars around a workout can do wonders, and having it before you caffeinate. So 100%, man.
I've noticed when getting a session in, leaving here, say if I've been stuck at the desk and haven't eaten a little bit, I'm like, I am that little bit hungry and I want to eat some food before training, but I don't want to have a big meal or something like that. The go-to is definitely honey. Like get some honey in before, and find it's very, very resourceful.
Honey's a cracker one. Yeah, it's the only food that doesn't ever go off, ever expire. Only food, never.
There you go.
Like literally, they found it from like the Egyptians. It was like
it's always the fucking Egyptians.
Yeah,
man.
it's always.
Oh no, those fuckers had it figured out.
Don't go down that rabbit hole, man. I'll be here for hours.
Yeah,
I went down that rabbit hole on TikTok a couple of nights ago. I was like, oh my God, I need to stop this.
Me and me two best mates, we have a chat, and that's all it is Egyptian shit. We're like, next year we're going to book a holiday and we're going to go there and we're going to find out the reasons.
Strap in.
Mate, that'll be the next leg of you guys' tour, I think. That'll be
Nothing will get done. It'll just be us walking around the pyramids trying to find out what the fuck happened.
Just on the Middle East tour. You ready? Go.
Middle East tour.
Yeah.
That would be good.
That'd be unreal.
Yeah.
Release the fuck out of Cairo. That'd be cool.
Oh.
That'd be good.
No.
So I think this would be a perfect little prelude. So guys, anyone listening at home, thanks for tuning in thus far and getting a bit of a taste of what we're going to be talking about in person in coming weeks. You'll be seeing plenty on socials, I'm sure, with the Polaris guys. Myself as well. I'll share it on my Instagram, and we'll be getting to put all this stuff into practice in a big practical day. A bit of a workshop we have planned. So
Fuck, I love having you on.
Yeah,
I don't
me
have to
too.
fucking do anything.
This isn't good to do. Like, we should have you early in the morning because now I'm hyped.
Yeah. Can you come on every week? This be the podcast?
It's actually quite refreshing being interviewed, because normally you've like as you guys know, because you interview people, so it's nice being the guest sometimes.
Yes.
It's really interesting. I think I'm up to episode 47 now, and so I've had to be the host for 47 times, and it's really nice to get on and just be able to someone to say, "What do you want to talk about?" I'm like, "Oh, what?" Because normally you got to like try and pull a theme out of someone's conversation, and then thread that into what you might want for that podcast episode to be about, and then just get a little glimpse of that topic, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, now this has got like, no, fuck this. I'm just gonna hook into what I want to talk about.
God.
I've had 60 hours of podcast where I had to go down a certain.
So many people are just like, they just could listen all day. I've had a couple of people listen to them twice.
That's cool.
They just enjoyed it that much. So
it's a shame, because I figured, because you guys get a lot of the messages. Hey, I did another recent podcast locally here as well with another well-respected sort of coach, and she same sort of thing. She got some really, really great messages back, and I don't always get them, or I'll be interstate or get busy or not check my messages and whatever. But I'm really happy. Hopefully anyone who's listening along gets some value out of this. And
I did definitely.
Oh, massively, yeah. Like Will said, there is an event coming up. We're organising. We're going to have it out, ready to rock and roll, and this can be a good intro to that event. So keep your eyes out for that. And if you do need anything from Will, I'll take his Insta. Insta's probably the best one.
Insta's the best one.
Down in the description down below, and you'll be able to hit him up down there with all your questions and anything you need. But mate, absolute pleasure.
Thank you for coming on. It's great.
Pleasure, gents. Thanks for
see you again in a couple of weeks.
So good.
Segment.
And it's going to be so good to edit because it's just on your camera. I don't have to cut and change. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks to Will, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yes, thank you. Peace.